Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Before we dive into this morning's briefing, there's a little bit of house cleaning I want to say off top. Everybody knows that, especially when it comes to YouTube, this website does no real moderation of spam bot content. So the comment sections are usually regularly filled with a bunch of automated replies clearly coming from somebody's little computer program. They set these things up to try to imitate whatever the channel is that they're trying to spoof. So whenever you see these comments that are replying has got a whole bunch of emojis, you know that I almost never use emojis, certainly not a whole bunch of hearts and valentines and all this stuff, and I never post any sort of phone number because I ain't got one. But it's amazing how many people will see this stuff, and occasionally some people who may not be paying attention will actually reply. That is dangerous because it's precisely that kind of response that kind of fuels these idiots to think, okay, this might be a place where we can find some live ones. So I put up on the screen just a few of the accounts that have actually been spam bombing my channel comment section over the last couple of weeks. Now, most of these accounts were only created just yesterday, March 4th. Others were created last week, but at least one of them, the one that didn't even have a username, that one's been around for 10 years or so. So as I said, YouTube is not trying to clean up any of this stuff, but you need to be aware of it. So I'm asking everyone to keep paying attention. Make sure you're paying attention to who it is that you think you're responding to. Though these clowns, their little spam bot replies, it's obvious that it's not me. It should be obvious to you. You've never heard me post any sort of phone number. Oh, please send me a message. Why the hell would I want anyone to send me a message? Seriously, family. In over a decade and a half of doing this, do you think I'm going to say, yeah, call me up so we have a phone conversation? You got to be kidding me. But that's something that I want to go ahead and say off top. And yes, I will be saying this in the future because there's always new people who are coming to the channel. And that being the case, we owe it to them to make sure that we make them aware of how we do things around here and how we don't do things. I will never be posting any sort of comments saying, send me some messages. Send me some messages. Hey, thank you for your support. Thank you for your input. Now go ahead and contact me on my Telegram channel. All right, now that we've taken care of the reminder, let's go ahead and get to this morning's briefing. You can tell that the memo must have gone out from DNC headquarters because I noticed that after yesterday's briefing where I posted about how these town hall meetings are all of these angry yelling people and that basically it's the Democrats and the white left doing their own version of the kind of political theater that Chris Rufo and the white right have been doing at school board meetings, I noticed that a number of these DNC sock puppet accounts apparently have come out of their dormancy, and now here they are carpet bombing us with all sorts of nonsense. Yeah, they got their little spine back because DNC headquarters is doing this little political operation. And I can also tell that they're doing this kind of coordinated message nonsense. And this actually meant to reach those of you who are viewers of and listeners to the black media. You're the ones that they're trying to actually influence. And what they're saying is, you should have voted for Kamala Harris. As if we're sitting here saying, oh my God, we're not getting anything from Donald Trump. We weren't going to get anything from Kamala Harris either. What we're saying is all of these angry white people that you're seeing, whether it be at school board meetings for the Republicans or whether it be at town hall meetings for the Democrats, none of these people are interested in helping black people at all. And that being the case, we have to make sure that we do what we did in the past, which is we represent ourselves. Now, for these little DNC shill accounts, I'm pointing these next comments point blank both barrels at your empty heads. Black people have been talking about our economic demands since the beginning of time. We've been making demands to Democrats for decades. Everyone else is complaining because they're temporarily inconvenienced. We, on the other hand, are being economically strangled, not inconvenienced, but strangled. And the Democrats, in their turn, have been just as complicit as the Republicans in our economic strangulation. At the very least, they've sat back and allowed it to happen. They certainly haven't given any pushback to it. Now, as black media, we are blessed. We have the smartest viewers, but we also have the dumbest trolls. Democrats have made it clear that they're not going to do anything for us unless they're forced to. They have been very explicit about that. So we have to break them, is what they're saying. The only way we're going to do what you niggers are demanding is if you break us. Now, who in their right mind wants to support a political party that has repeatedly told you that they're determined not to do anything for you? And it wasn't just Kamala Harris, by the way. When Hillary Clinton was running for office, you had Bill Clinton sitting there making excuses for the '94 crime bill. And super predators, they wouldn't even touch that one. And as for Joe Biden, I laid out time and again how he had a whole raft of phony promises and lies that he made. Everything from his so-called White House level police accountability commission all the way to the Lift Every Voice plan, whatever the hell that was. Whatever happened to the George Floyd Policing Act? But the John Lewis Voting Act. Now, keep in mind, I was no supporter of Biden then, still not now. And that being the case, I didn't have my heart going pitter-pat for any of his empty promises because I knew that they weren't worth the hot air that he was using to say them. But for the Negroes who were saying back in 2020, Biden gonna do things for us, just you wait. Okay, we waited and waited and waited. So what did he do for black people? Not a damn thing. And that's the reason why all of these little shill accounts went dormant for that 4-year period. Now, if you're stupid enough to be telling us that we should vote for a political party who have told us repeatedly to our faces that they're not going to do anything for us, hell, you might as well vote for the Republicans then. See, you have a bunch of these sock puppet accounts, and these fools are desperate to get themselves a job working for some Democrat politician. That's what you're seeing, by the way. That's how they earn their stripes with their local white DNC handlers at the county level. These are the same bottom feeders who were hiding during the Biden administration. Remember that? Soon as Biden took office, all of those sock puppet accounts that had been carpet bombing us for the previous couple of years, that had been spamming us with DNC talking points, they suddenly disappeared after the 2020 election. And when we in the black media kept reminding you of Biden's broken promises, those sock puppet accounts remained silent because we didn't allow our issues to just fade away with the 2020 election. They saw all the demands that we were making, and they were like, well, this is kind of just the after effects, the echoes of those 2020 uprisings. We got what we wanted. We got our guy in there. We got Kamala Harris in there as VP, and the Democrats got a clean sweep the House and the Senate because of those gullible niggers. So now we're just going to lay low for a while, let them blow off some steam, and we'll come back by summer of 2021. But of course, as we all know, that's not what happened. We were keeping Biden's phony promises fresh in your mind. We didn't let up. And the Democrats couldn't deny it, and they couldn't run away from it either, so these online shill accounts couldn't escape having to address it, so instead they just went silent. But now with Elon Musk being, well, Elon Musk, and Trump doing his provocateur routine, some of these Democrats are hoping that they can recreate 2020. See, politically speaking, the Democrats were on the defensive for most of the Trump years, because the orange man, in spite of himself, managed to have a halfway decent economy. But that meant nothing when the Black Lives Matter protests culminated in the 2020 uprisings, and that, combined with the economic impact from the COVID restrictions, created just enough room for Biden and Harris to eke out a razor-thin victory. But as I told you then in my post-2020 election analyses, that's a trick that would only work one time, and as we see, it only worked once. In 2024, there were no BLM protests. Nigga Jim Clyburn complained back in 2020 that you'll recall he whined and griped about how young people needed to stop sloganeering, stop pressing Democrats to defund the police. He was sitting there acting like he knew how to win elections. Apparently he thought he knew everything about politics. Idiots like Jim Clyburn are the entire reason that Trump won in 2016. And he's the reason that Trump won in 2020. Why? One of the main people you'll recall that Jim Clyburn was complaining about during his rant was that he felt that these young people saying defund the police. Remember what he said? That's what cost Jamie Harrison his election. That was his excuse. That was a lie. Those young people that Clyburn was complaining about, they were the ones who handed the Democrats both the presidency and the Senate on a silver platter that year, giving the Democrats a clean sweep of the executive and legislative branches. And also, it was the young people who made sure that the post-election momentum carried over to the 2 remaining Senate races that came out of Georgia, putting Raphael Warnock and that other guy Ossoff into the Senate, giving Democrats control of the Senate. It was those young people in the streets who also turned up to the polls too. But Clyburn didn't care about that. The white media had been saying that he was the most influential and important black politician in America. As far as he was concerned, he had to maintain that illusion. So when his boy Jamie Harrison got spanked, what do you think Clyburn was going to do? He was going to lie and say, well, yeah, it was a young voter saying defund the police. Really? How come that didn't hurt Raphael Warnock? How come that didn't hurt Joe Biden? How come that didn't hurt any of the members of the squad? The Democrats had tons of momentum. See, that's the problem. People like Jim Clyburn are dyed-in-the-wool liars because they sold their souls to wealthy white interests a long time ago. As far as he's concerned, he will tell any lie as long as they keep giving him some butter biscuits, him and his pathetic children like Mignon Clyburn, who white power put on the FCC, and now she works as a quote-unquote consultant for the very white media corporations that she had previously been quote-unquote regulating when she was on the FCC. That's what Clyburn cares about. He's going to have white power make sure that he and his kids are taken care of while you'll be in the streets. And this is who these DNC shills and plants in the comments section are trying to carry water for. And by the way, what happened after the 2020 election? Jim Clyburn got his boy, Jamie Harrison, made chairman of the DNC. So finally, nigga Jim Clyburn had control of the DNC at the very top. And armed with all this sage advice from Jim Clyburn, what did Jamie Harrison do? He immediately lost control of the Senate in 2022, and then he presided over the Democrats losing the presidency in the House of Representatives in 2024. You see, without those young people that Clyburn was whining about, Democrats got the same results they got in 2016. And that's the reason you see the Democrats trying to fabricate and manufacture and somehow make an artificial version of the same atmosphere of outrage that existed during the Trump years, specifically 2020. But the problem for them is, without the legitimate protests of Black Americans, their efforts will mostly result in only a few electoral gains. They need a political tidal wave, and you don't get that from older white voters or from just a few disaffected Gen Xers alone. You need broad-based support across multiple generations. The very young people who Democrats have been hell-bound and determined to ignore, they are the very ones who have to see their demands finally being put front and center and most of all being enacted into policy. But the Democrats have already said they're not going to do that. For the shills and morons out there who are saying, well, if you don't like all of these protests not having black folks there, well, y'all was the ones who said that black folks need to stay home. What we said was, if our interests are not being put front and center, we're not voting, and we should not. You do not go to the polls when someone's not offering you anything. And that's the reason why we said that the next phase of black empowerment is going to be us making sure that we have people that we actually get on the ballot. We're not going to play this game of, let's look at this slate of hand-picked puppets that the DNC presents to us, and let's try to play Inspector Clouseau or Indiana Jones, and we'll try to see if we can figure out which one of them stinks the least. No. No more of this letting DNC shills and operatives online tell us that we have to choose the lesser of two evils. We are a moral people, and moral people don't choose evil. If they don't have good on the ballot, then they will present good on the ballot. They will make sure to put their own on there. That's what moral people do. That is what empowered people do. And that is why that's the next step for us. Of course, the shills and plants don't like that. Their job is to do what their white paymasters at the DNC want, and that is to continue the cycle of racial deprivation of black Americans, and we're not having it. So you're doggone right. The black vote is on strike, and as we're showing with all of these illegal alien groups, you better believe any sort of black protesting on behalf of the greater left, that's on strike too. Black folks are not sitting here showing up simply because we have to lend our voices to everybody else. No, it's time that they lend their voices to us for a change. And if they don't, well, in that case, then we're going to have the establishment view be the one that's going to prevail. But you know, history has shown that if enough time passes, there will be a certain critical mass of people who will get their minds right, not because they want to, but when it hurts enough. That's always been the pattern, though. Reminds me of what Winston Churchill said. He said, the Americans can always be counted on to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. And you know what? He's right. For the dominant society in this country, that's exactly what the pattern's always been. Oh, they'll get around to doing what black people said had to be done from the very beginning, but not until they spend years and years trying to see how they can avoid it. And for you shills and bootlicks in the comments section, when I talk about people who have been trying to avoid doing right by black people, I'm talking about Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Simone Sanders, nigga Jim Clyburn, Nancy Pelosi, and all the rest of their pals. That's who I'm talking about. We know that the Republicans aren't going to do right by black people. They happen to be the loud, boisterous, vocal, reactionary wing of white supremacy. They're the ones that established power gathers under because everybody understands exactly what they're about. But for the people who claim that they want to be progressive, the people who are looking and going, well, we kind of feel some kind of way about the current social order occasionally. That's what you're going to need a phony group for, some controlled opposition. Some individuals who will say, oh, we happen to be for the disenfranchised. We're for the little guy. We're for the people who have been left out, the people who are not part of the establishment. And then you turn around, these guys are sitting here telling you everything they're not going to do. And they make sure that they hire a phalanx of online suckers and suck-ups who will have the nerve to tell you that you're wrong for saying that you're not going to tolerate being ignored. And if they ignore you, then you will ignore them. We're giving them back their own energy, and they don't like it. And these little DNC shills and bootlicks who infest the comment section, what these clowns are talking about doesn't even suit the needs or interests of the very white people who they actually are interested in taking care of. You see, if the Democrats were serious about making any sort of changes, even if they were halfway serious, what they would be calling for is a 21st century version of FDR. See, the Democrats love to say, oh my God, we're repeating the worst parts of the 20th century. Well, in that case, then what was the answer to the worst parts of the 20th century? Bringing forward some people who, at least on paper, were trying to be different. So where is the 21st century version of FDR? Where is even one Democrat who's going to be calling out the big money that the party has decided to prostitute itself for? None of them will do it. Not even Bernie Sanders. What Democrat is there who would actually push for policies to reduce and in many cases eliminate the power of big business? How many of them are going to say, you know what, if we got a minimum wage in this country, it's time that we institute a maximum wage? There is something fundamentally wrong with allowing a huge aggregation of money and power in the hands of one individual. This country should not produce an Elon Musk. It should not produce a Mark Zuckerberg. It should not produce a Jeff Bezos or a Bill Gates. When individuals like that have that much money, that's somebody who has too much power. But nobody would ever point to a white person under white supremacy and say, that's too much power for one man to have. Oh, they'll say it about a black man like Malcolm X. They'll say, that's too much power for him to have. Yeah, the black people actually listen to him. That's too much power for you to have. And Malcolm X didn't harm anyone. He didn't hurt anyone. And yet they hated him. They thought he had too much power. Meanwhile, you got guys like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and that clown who runs Alphabet, whatever they call themselves. And these guys have the kind of wealth and power that the Caesars of Rome could only have dreamt of. The popes of Europe, they could only have dreamt of the kind of wealth and the kind of opulence and power that the Elon Musks have. And yet nobody, not even the Democrats, dares say that's too much power for one man to have and he must be stripped of it. Democracy demands it. For the good of America, they must be. They're not going to say that, because the money as they see it is in the right hands. As long as it's not black people's hands, that's the right hands. The entire reason that Trump is back in the White House, the entire reason that he was even able to make it to the White House in the first place, is because for 50 years, Democrats have refused to be responsive to their base. They made a mockery of democracy in that they did not respond to the people's needs. So when you create a political vacuum, you can't complain if a clown comes and fills it. Let's take California as a case study. California went from being the most affordable place in America to being the least affordable. It was precisely California's affordability that attracted so many people to go there. They are the place where Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and of course Elon Musk made their fortunes at. And all of those men made their fortunes specifically in the Democrat stronghold of San Francisco. California is ground zero for the housing crisis, but you wouldn't know it by how Democrats talk about it. They won't even mention it. They won't even say that rents or housing prices are out of control, and that the corporations and landlords who are charging extortionate prices for housing are crippling the rest of the economy. See, the landlords figured out something a long time ago, which is that if any other bill is going to be neglected, it won't be the housing bill. That's going to be the last one that people let go because they need a roof over their heads if nothing else. So, since housing is going to be the bill that people will pay no matter what they think of the cost, no matter what else is going on in their lives, then why not just tell the people the price is going to be sky high no matter what the median income is in these places? That's why they don't care about it, because as far as they're concerned, well, we're going to say that it needs to be this. It's going to be 5 times whatever the average income is in the area, and you just need to come up with a way to pay it. Now, Democrats are not going to say this. So whether it's the tech bros or the housing crisis, you can trace it all back to California, specifically back to San Francisco. That's where Silicon Valley's rooted at. And the housing crisis when you consider that Airbnb started in and is still headquartered in San Francisco. Democrats turned their backs on their base a long time ago, and while their constituents demanded that they stop the 1% from raping the economy, Democrats were too busy taking money from those same interests to do anything about them. Let's take the housing crisis in particular, a crisis that was largely caused by big hedge funds like Blackstone, BlackRock, and Vanguard, who, after the 2008 housing crash, swooped in and bought up all of those distressed properties. And then they declared that all of those single-dwelling family homes are no longer for sale, only for rent. In the process, these hedge funds turned the housing market into a subsidiary of the stock market, and they artificially created a housing scarcity when the truth of the matter is there's actually a surplus. And neither the Republicans nor the Democrats have said so much as a peep about it, and none of them dare propose legislation to force the hedge funds to divest themselves of all of these homes that they went ahead and called themselves buying, or to prevent companies from buying huge tracts of land in and around urban centers, which they then hold on to so that their partners at these big home building companies can build on them for equally extortionate rates. And whatever Blackstone, BlackRock, and Vanguard didn't get, Airbnb did. Their entire business model is based on incentivizing people to acquire properties, put renters into them, and then just do that over and over again with as many properties as possible. Up until the last 20 years, the most readily available way for people to build generational wealth was home ownership. That would be their part of the world that they could then pass down to future generations, making it where future generations would own real estate, which would always have value. But the Democrats have presided over the monopolization of that, and now it's basically been outlawed by corporate fiat, and the Democrats haven't said boo. And that's how homes went from being a place to live to being an investment, or a place to park your money. It started under the Democrats in San Francisco. And what Democrats are in charge of San Francisco? Gavin Newsom, who was mayor of the city before he became governor of California, Kamala Harris, who was DA there, and before that she was the pet floozy for Willie Brown, who was also mayor of San Francisco, and of course Nancy Pelosi, who is the alleged congressional representative for that area. And keep in mind, Kamala Harris was taking money from Jonathan Gray, who is the president of Blackstone, America's largest landlord. And she was also taking political advice, quote-unquote, from a senior executive from BlackRock, who had been part of her campaign. So she literally is on the payroll of the very hedge funds that destroyed the housing market in America. And she even had one of these hedge fund executives working on her campaign, advising her on what to do about the housing crisis that they had created. Now, when did Kamala Harris explain all this? When did she tell people, oh, by the way, you know how BlackRock and Blackstone and Vanguard swooped in and bought up all these houses and created an artificial housing scarcity? Well, I'm taking money from these guys, and they're the ones who have me as a sock puppet repeating their talking points, and that's the reason why I haven't said anything about the housing crisis or what I'm going to do about it, and I'm not going to, because I'm on their payroll. Did she ever tell anyone that? It's like I've always told you. Nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy. The same Democrats who pretend to complain about the tech bros and pretend to want to fix the housing crisis are also the same Democrats who created the people who caused these problems in the first place and protect them to this day. Now tell me, how is this any different than what one would expect from, say, Ron DeSantis in Florida or Greg Abbott in Texas? They do similar things, as does President Trump. So I want to know, where's this difference that these DNC shills keep telling us there is? I mean, you can tell that the talking points went out from DNC headquarters because these shills were all using the exact same language. Well, let me tell you something. You guys complain about how Trump and Musk are using Doge to unilaterally eliminate spending by eliminating federal workers. And you're complaining that the GOP-controlled Congress isn't stepping in to stop them. They've basically abdicated their authority as both the power of the purse and legislative oversight to the White House. They've just sat back and said, okay, we're not going to do anything about what the executive does. Well, I'm glad to see that you shills woke up from your 4-year coma, because I personally told you that this is exactly what the GOP has been doing for years in states like Ron DeSantis' Florida and Greg Abbott's Texas and other red state sewers like Michigan. These red state GOP-controlled legislatures would basically pass laws making it where they would give all of their legislative policy powers over to whoever the governor was, and that these governors were now empowered to basically do everything that ordinarily would be in the hands of the legislature. They deliberately abdicated all of their legislative authority to the governors of their states as a way to make sure that even if they lost the legislature, some GOP hack governor would still be able to essentially legislate from the governor's office. Now, Democrats didn't tell you that. I did. I've talked about it for years. You didn't have to wait for Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Doge and the rest of their racist pals to start pulling these shenanigans. Black people have been complaining about it at the state level for years, but Democrats didn't do anything about it, and neither did you shills. And why is that? Because when I talked about these GOP tactics to circumvent the voters, I pointed out that the GOP was doing it as a way to attack black people. But you didn't hear that from Joe Biden, or Barack Obama, or Elizabeth Warren, or Nancy Pelosi, or nigga Jim Clyburn, or Kamala Harris, or anyone else. From Michigan's illegal and unconstitutional emergency manager law, which everyone recognized is nothing more than a state saying we're not going to obey the 15th Amendment. Sure, we're not going to make it where black people can't vote. We'll just make it where anyone that black people vote for isn't allowed to govern. All the way down to Chris Rufo and his racist pals in Florida and the legislative antics that they pulled. All these things have been done against black people. And where was the Democratic Party at? I was here. The black media was here talking about this for years. I'm very sorry that some of you shills only just discovered the black media this last month. But then again, you aren't plugged into the black community since you're not part of the black community. You want to do the same old, just support what everybody else is doing, and then make the same old, phony, false, stupid claims that, well, black people will benefit from it, tangentially, on the periphery, maybe. Same thing that they've always done. Oh, we got this policy here, and well, you see, there'll be a few black people who are eligible to apply for it, so that means that it helps the entire black community. So you should all be behind this. Never mind the fact that, as usual, everybody else is going to benefit from it primarily. We might have one or two people who do, but the Democrats will make sure there's all sorts of trick bags included to make certain that if any black person benefits from it, they'll be immediately undermined afterwards. That's the game. So yeah, talking about these town halls, these are not admissions that the Democrats were right. What it is the Democrats trying to find a way to get their political mojo back. They're trying to artificially recreate the political momentum that they had in 2020. They're figuring to themselves, okay, we recognize that 2016 just repeated itself. Well, the answer to 2016 is 2020. But we got to do it in a way where black people are not going to be benefiting from it. Because too many black people were putting pressure on us in 2020, and as we just got through seeing last year, these black folks ain't going to let up on us, so we desperately need a way to circumvent them. We got to get around them. And no, the Democrats have not turned over a new leaf. They are still no more deserving of our support than they were 4.5 months ago. The Democrats have had every opportunity that there is to come to us like they've been going to all of these other groups and saying, we get it, we have neglected the black vote, we've ignored the black vote, we've marginalized the black vote, hell, we've taken part in attacking the black vote. We got a hell of a lot to atone for. Tell us what it is that you want and we're going to do that. That's going to be the Democratic Party platform. Now, if they were to address black people's concerns, then they would actually also answer a lot of these concerns that the rest of American society has, the non-black portion of it has. But the Democrats are trying to figure out a way to have their cake and eat it too. They want to actually pretend to themselves as if they're going to address the issues that the country's facing, but as far as they're concerned, well, they're only trying to address it for the white portion of the country. They certainly aren't trying to address it for black people. Because they've had 50 plus years to do that. And every time black people have said, this is what we require, the Democrats have said, nah, we're going another way. We're not doing that at all. We don't need Republicans on the one hand saying that black people need to have things taken from them, and Democrats on the other hand who say that black people shouldn't have anything. See, as the black grassroots, we're in this for the long haul. We're not in this for one election cycle or 2 or 3. We're not doing like these shills and desperately hoping that we can walk in the footsteps of Simone Mammy Sanders. You won't catch us sitting around daydreaming all day about working on some Democrat presidential campaign like Simone Sanders did, and hopefully we can parlay that into some sort of quote-unquote consulting gig like Roly-Poly Martin desperately wishes he could do. And oh, if all else fails, at the very least, hopefully we'll have some CNN or MSNBC show that lets us be a panelist. And if we're really good and we sell the soap for Massa and we make sure not to say anything that Massa doesn't approve of, well, maybe they'll give us our own show. Now, I've told you in the past about Eugene Daniels. If you've seen him, you know what he looks like, this clown. And I don't say that to be pejorative. I say that because every time you see the guy, he's just so extra with everything. I mean, this guy, he goes out of his way to just sit there and gesticulate, and his facial features, it's like his face is made out of doggone jello. It's ridiculous. The man looks like a clown. I guess that's the reason why he joined the circus, because MSNBC is apparently going to be giving him his own show. And with that, family, I'm going to wrap up this morning's briefing. Just keep in mind, these shills and bootlicks and DNC operatives who have been plaguing us, these guys, they seem to be in hibernation for a while, but they've woken up now because the Democrats have a political operation underway. They're trying to see if they can artificially manufacture the political momentum that they had in 2020. But if they're going to do that, the first thing they're going to have to do is to repeat the political success that they had in 2018 when they took back the House of Representatives. And that's the reason that the Democrats were ready and able to impeach Trump in 2019, specifically because of the fact that he withheld arms from Ukraine. If the Democrats want to try that again, first they're going to have to get back the House of Representatives in 2026. That's what we see underway. This is the first salvo of the 2026 midterm campaigns. That's what this is. Well, you know what? We're not concerning ourselves with the usual power games being played by these white politicians. Black empowerment is not going to be held hostage to any sort of political party's wishes. All that matters is our demands. And we're taking a hard-nosed approach to this. And if any of these shills are sitting here thinking to themselves that they're going to start some process of a whisper campaign and saying, you guys need to just let up on the Democrats. You know, the Democrats are looking out for your interests too. You need to stop listening to those black media types. I mean, you need to find a way to try to work with the Democrats. You got to find a way to work with the Democrats. That's what they're trying to say. What they're trying to say is, well, you're going to be politically irrelevant, you know. The Democrats are just going to pass you guys by and they're going to find a way to get around you. You're going to be irrelevant, and then what will you have? Well, for the sake of argument, I can answer that question for you. If the Democrats manage to do what they did before, and they pull off some skin-of-their-teeth victory without the mass of black voters, which, by the way, is impossible. Even under the best of circumstances like last year, the Democrats still had the majority of black support. But even if they did manage to find a substitute for black voters, the reality happens to be when you look at what Democrats have done for the last 50 years, all you see is what the Democrats refuse to do for us. And that being the case, your threats are completely empty. What are you going to do if the Democrats find a way to circumvent the black vote to get around you guys? What are you going to do then? The same thing we're doing now. The real question is, if the Democrats actually do find some way to circumvent the black vote, that means that they don't need any of you little bootlicks and shill accounts anymore. You're the ones who need to ask yourselves, what are you going to do? Here's a hint. You won't be coming over here. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. David Williams, Andre Nelson, Crystal O'Neill, Craig Simmons, and Amir Miller. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.